Did the Dominican Republic just end its economic momentum completely, grind it to a halt? This week, they announced a fiscal proposal for 2025 and beyond that makes some really big changes to the current economy, current tax structure, tax incentives, and all of that stuff. And I'm going to share with you exactly what's in this proposal, what's the impact on the economy, the impact on you as an investor, and will it pass? Let's dive in. Thanks to our sponsor on this video, Colchones Naco. Stay tuned for a discount offer and some free stuff. Let's start with that last question. Will this pass? In my opinion, absolutely not. At least not in its current form. But in order to understand its current form and where I see it changing, let me lay out what is in this proposal. By the way, I go deep on this and other topics in my newsletter. If you click the link below, you can subscribe to it and get a whole bunch of information. So the fiscal proposal is a 60-page document that you can read and go through, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But let me highlight the big pieces that are in there, the big changes. First is a tax on alcohol and sugary drinks. The proposal calls for a tax on alcohol to go from 10% to 11%. This was a little confusing to me because there's the 18% ITBIS or ITBIS. But here's what I learned. When you buy a drink at a bar, there is an underlying 10% tax in the price of the drink. They just load it in. And then on top of that, you're paying your 18%. Well, that 10% now will go to 11%. Not a huge change, but a change. So to be clear, you don't see it itemized on your bill. It's just in the price of the alcohol. If I'm wrong on that, somebody inform me. But in addition, a new tax for the bar or the restaurant or the resort buying a big bottle of whatever, vodka, will be 840 pesos for each bottle based on volume. Not only will it increase the tax from 10 to 11% on every alcoholic drink you buy, but since the bar or the restaurant is paying per bottle a tax of about $14 US, that'll be charged back to the customer as well. Now on sugary drinks like Coke, Pepsi, that sort of thing, the proposal is to add a tax of about half a peso to 1 peso for every 100 milliliters of the drink. And that half to 1 peso is based on how much sugar is in the drink. While I love the idea of eliminating sugary drinks, my personal story is I was drinking Coke and Pepsi like a madman until 2008. In November 3rd, I moved to Boston and made a decision I'm not going to drink soda anymore. Had headaches for a week and a half, but then dropped like 25 pounds and have kept it off. So these sugary drinks are dangerous. However, an additional tax on drinks and alcohol could have a negative impact on small businesses trying to sell these things, and now they have to sell them for more, especially in lower income communities. The second change, big proposal in there, is an increase in salary and benefits for public workers. This would go from 10,000 to 15,000 pesos a month with some other additional benefits that they get as well. And thirdly, probably the most controversial, especially for all of you who watch me and this particular audience, is removal of all tax incentives for the tourism industry, the film industry, and some of the manufacturing industries like textiles. That means no more Confotor. If you're not familiar with Confotor, very quickly, it is a tax incentive when you buy a property here in the Dominican Republic that developers offer, and hotels take advantage of this as well. It's a great incentive for them to build here, where you waive the 3% transfer tax up front when you buy, which could be thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the purchase. And you also waive all property taxes for 15 years. And yes, this proposal is saying get rid of it. There's also a proposal to sort of end tax evasion to the extent they can. That means hiring additional agents and doing more work in that regard. But at the end of the day, all of this is to generate additional tax revenue. Now, why is that important, you might ask? Well, let me tell you. At the surface level, additional tax revenue would go to fund infrastructure, bridges, roads, airports, train lines, all of that stuff. That's what tax revenue is supposed to do. Now, does it get misappropriated, stolen, backdoor deals between politicians and their buddy, the developer? Of course. That happens in every country, and we all know the history of that sort of corruption here. But the gist is they're trying to increase tax revenue. Now, infrastructure and spending is one thing, but there's a deeper reason to increase tax revenue, and it actually, honestly, economically, makes a lot of sense. See, last year, the three biggest credit reporting agencies, Fitch, Moody's, and S&P, all upgraded the credit rating of the Dominican Republic. This is almost like TransUnion, Equifax, and whatever the other one is, taking your credit up from 600 to 700. With improved credit, you have better lending opportunities. You pay lower interest on debt. The Dominican Republic is in what's called the non-investment grade category. There are multiple different levels, and DR is right up here in this top category within the non-investment grade. In this category, interest rates vary between, say, 7 and 10%. So for every dollar of debt, they're paying 7 and 10% as a government back to whoever their debtors are. While it's great to see the progress, the Dominican Republic has one question really, and at is, hey, how do we get up to this next level into the investment grade category? Because once they are, now you're talking about debt terms between, say, 3 and 5% versus 8 and 10, literally half. Plus, you're going to attract a lot more international capital because you're now viewed as a much more stable investment. Well, that analysis on how to move up has been done. And almost every economist, including the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, said, hey, DR, you want to bump up in credit rating, get that really nice interest rate on your debt and attract more international investment? You need more tax revenue. So look, nobody likes more taxes, but if you were faced with the opportunity to lower your debt payments, create some additional cash flow so that you could do some stuff in your own life, but it required this really hard decision to do it, wouldn't you? Here's what I mean by that. Let's say you've got an interest rate on your mortgage at 9% and you're paying $3,000 a month because your credit is 550. And you're told if you get your credit to 700, your interest rate will go from 9 to 4.5 and your payment will go from 3,000 to 1,800, freeing up $1,200 extra dollars a month for you to do what you need to with it. But in order to do that, you got to do something you really don't want to do. You have to go get a side job for 4 hours a week or something like that. So you can show additional income so your credit rating increases. You might do it, right? What do you think? Drop that down below. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about that. By the way, while you're down there, click that subscribe button. If you're getting any value from any of the content I put out, I would love to have you along for the ride. And now I'm being told to say, hit the notification bell so you see when videos come out and you can dive in on all these topics with me. All right, so we got all these proposals out there to eliminate these tax incentives, increase tax on alcohol, and so on. And it's being done to increase tax revenue so that there could be money spent on infrastructure, but maybe more importantly, or as importantly at least, to improve the credit rating for the country, therefore making debt less expensive and being able to attract additional international capital at lower debt terms. So what does that mean for the Dominican economy if this all happens? The projection is that this would generate an additional $122 billion per year in revenue for the government through tax dollars. But what I don't understand about it, to be honest with you, is if you do this, it's not as if the current owners of properties or hotels that are under Confotor suddenly have to start paying taxes. Or those that are in production right now that are approved for Confotor, they're not going to be paying taxes. And all of the people that have proposals in front of a government official right now are going to get them pushed through, and I guarantee you they're going to get them approved ahead of this being enacted, if it's enacted in January of 2025, to get their projects approved for Confotor. So there's a runway of stuff out there being built under Confotor. But if the tax incentives are completely gone for future development, and I'm a developer, I'm running over to Jamaica, the Bahamas, or somewhere else to figure out, hey, what are you willing to do? Because DR just pulled all their incentives away from us. So you eliminate Confotor, but then development stops or slows dramatically. Therefore, no new buildings are being built in order for you to generate tax revenue from them. At least in theory. It's an interesting bet being taken by the Minister of Finance and the President to say, hey, look, we understand that this removes all the incentives for any future builders to come in and build in this beautiful land. But we believe our product is so much more superior to all of our competitors and that we have so much more stability, and that maybe if we improve our economy even further and step into the developed world, the tax incentives won't matter to these developers. It's a big, bold thought. Maybe it's what they're thinking. I don't know. But one calculus they might be making is that tourism probably won't be impacted at all. Let me explain why. I did a bunch of work to figure out what would happen if this policy were enacted, and everything I could find showed anywhere from a 5 to 10% increase in the cost of you traveling down here to go to your all-inclusive vacation. Then I looked at the averages and compared it to other countries. Dominican Republic, let's throw it up, $3,100 on average for a mid-tier all-inclusive vacation for two. In Jamaica, it's $3,400. Bahamas is $5,000 to $6,000, and Mexico is around $2,500. So with an increase of 10%, that would mean that the price to come to the Dominican would be the same price to go to Jamaica. Still less than the Bahamas, and a little more than Mexico. But Jamaica has a level 3 travel advisory. I believe Mexico does too. Dominican is level 2. One thing Americans want to know is that they're going to be safe. Are you going to spend a few extra $100 as an American to travel to a country perceived as safe versus one that's perceived as not? For a mid-tier travel, I don't know that $300-400 in difference in a trip really makes a difference. Meaning, if you're willing to pay 31, you're willing to pay 34. I mean, look, Jamaica has a murder rate at 60 per 100,000. Dominican's at 12. Mexico is Mexico. There's all this cartel and craziness happening down there. And it's also huge. So they're going to get their tourist attraction. So I don't know that a price increase based on this policy or any policy, whatever they put in place, will actually slow tourism. I don't see it. That's just my calculation. Now, on the lower end, those that are budget travelers, maybe, because every $100 matters. But budget travelers often are making the decision, do they or don't they? Whereas the mid to high tier travelers just deciding, where do I go and does it make sense for the price that I'm paying? And again, if you're somebody who's paying $300 to $3,100 anyway, $3,400 isn't going to make you walk away. It wouldn't make me walk away. In other words, it's still a good deal. So the Dominican has the advantage of having been cheap to begin with. So increasing the cost of travel may not do anything. This actually reminds me as a real estate investor. I bought a building, a 16-unit building, and the rents were like $500. Market was $800. And we went in and raised the rents on all the existing tenants to like $650. That is a big increase from where you were. The prior owner didn't raise rents for like 12 years. So what happened? Everyone barked. Oh, this is ridiculous. We're going to move out. I'm going to go find a place or whatever. I'll be honest, as an investor, the calculus I was making was, but I'm looking in the market and you're not going to get anything for under $800. So on principle, go for it. But once you look and see that $650 is still a good deal, probably going to stay. You know what happened? 12 out of 12, they just paid the extra $150 a month. That's what this reminds me of. And again, folks, this is just my perspective. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm not an expert, just sharing my thoughts and ideas. I think they make sense, but I'll let you decide. But I'll tell you what, it does make me tired thinking about it. So it's a good thing our sponsor today is a mattress company. I'm so proud to be working with Colchones Naco, a Dominican-owned, Dominican-manufactured, mission-focused company selling Sealy, Serta, Simmons, and even their own Naco Royal line of mattresses. We own 3 of these bad boys, plus a bedroom set. When we went shopping for our new place, we couldn't find a better deal on mattresses than right here. And now they're celebrating their 3-year anniversary with up to 60% off this month in October. And they always have different deals. And I'll tell you what, if you type in this coupon code, the greatest coupon code ever, El Gringo 24, you're gonna get 2 free pillows with that purchase of a mattress. So you just got your new condo or you're moving down here, check out Colchones Naco, get your mattresses here. Trust me, I'm a customer, love it here. And while I'm here, I'm gonna get a little rest. All right, back after my nap, where were we? The impact on you as an investor. So I'm gonna speak for me as an investor, having just purchased a $170,000 pre-construction property that's not Confortor in Cortecito. By the way, people always ask down on the link, it's with Boardwalk Properties. If you want access to this property, click that link and we'll get you connected to Boardwalk. I got all the links down below. Just click whatever you want to click. So when I think about and project out what happens if this goes through, I mentioned before development stops or slows dramatically at least. So that means reduced demand. Then I think about the motivation of buyers right now, who they are right now. We'll talk about future buyers in a moment, but stick with me, people. Stick with me right now. And ask yourselves this, because you're the buyer. People buying now, anecdotally talking to all the realtors, are mostly Dominicans, Dominican Americans, Dominican Europeans, Dominican Canadians. The motivation for people buying here right now, all this demand that's coming down here, is not Confortor. That is like an amazing bonus add-on. In fact, many of you, like me, probably didn't even know about this until you started thinking about buying down here anyway. So for the casual buyer, the Dominican buyer, you want a piece of your homeland or a piece of your wife or husband's homeland. In my case, my wife is Dominican. So you're buying based on the fact that it's still pretty cheap. It's an amazing place. You see the future potential and you want a spot for yourself for now, for the future, to retire or whatever it might be. And really, even those that are non-Dominican, Canadians, Europeans mostly, that are buying down here, again, they're not doing it based on Confortor. That's not the main motivation. There is a segment of buyers that look for tax incentives in different countries, and that's why they buy. So my point is, there's still the same demand to own here, Confortor or not. And if Confortor goes away and there's no further development or very little, then supply becomes restricted while you still have good demand. So as the guy owning a $170,000 condo a block from the beach, I'm thinking, all right, there's still demand, not a lot of supply. I'm feeling pretty good about the future value of my property. Supply versus demand, very basic economics. That's how I'm thinking about it. Maybe I'm nuts. And that's if Confortor goes away. Now, for future buyers, those who are looking at where can I invest, they might be watching the Dominican. In fact, I know of a couple. There's a guy called the Wealthy Expat. There's another guy called the Nomad Capitalist. Both of these guys talk about, like, got my eye on DR. Confitor, the tax incentives there, the thriving economy, the growth. They're projecting forward and saying, this might be a place for me to really go into and then bring my audience and those that are looking to become expats that have no affiliation and don't really know anything about these countries right now. Those folks are the future investors that create ridiculous demand. And they're only in play if there's an advantage for them to be in play from a tax perspective. So if Confitor stays in some form, you've got that demand as well, and you'll still have a lot of development. So in either scenario, I feel my analysis, my deep gut instinct, my Zen man is saying that demand is still going to outpace supply, whether there's more supply built with a lot more demand coming, or there's existing supply with equal demand above and beyond what the existing supply is right now. I should have napped longer. Those mattresses are comfy, by the way. I'm telling you, we own them. They're great. 60% in October. You got to go for it. All right. So will it pass in its current form? I've sat down with a few different people, and this is all just early stage, a few days in. I'm recording this like 3 days after the thing came out. I've had breakfast and lunch with people. I've had phone conversations. I've talked to real estate professionals, all of that stuff. And here's my take. It won't pass as is. There will be some modifications, particularly on the Confitor and the removal of tax exemptions in the tourism sector. What does that mean? Does that mean it goes from 15 years tax-free to 10? Does that mean taking the 3% transfer tax, instead of down to 0, it's down to 1%? Or some combination of all of it? I don't know. But I look at this proposal, and this is just what I feel from talking to different people who know this stuff and are well connected to officials in the government. Scutterbutt on the streets. Whatever, what's the Spanish for scutterbutt? Scutterbutt. I don't know. I see this as like a weather balloon floated up to kind of get a temperature for what it's going to be once we put it out there. And you're hearing all of the pushback on it. There's no interest in the Dominican government to stall this freight train of an economy. And when you think about the political side of this, right? Abinader wants his legacy to live on. We're going to get into that in a second because he could screw this up. I'll explain how. But the next president that would come out of the modern revolutionary party, at least who they hope to be, is probably Collado. David Collado is the Minister of Tourism. And right now that dude is flying high. They don't want to stifle that. I know they went to the Minister of Finance recently and said, hey, what about this? It's going to do this, it's going to do that. And he was like, nope, it's good. Don't worry about it. I think that's political posturing. But in the end, I see this adjusting. We'll see how that ages. You'll have to take that segment, record it if this thing passes as is, like a day after this post, and be like, don't trust El Gringo anymore. But that's what I believe. And that's honestly what I'm hearing. It's what I thought initially, and then it's being validated by what I consider to be pretty smart people on the ground here. So if it passes in a modified way, it generates additional tax revenue, but not at the level potential that they were hoping, or maybe it is the level they're hoping, but they're putting out this extreme example to kind of bring it back toward the middle to what they really want. That's negotiation. Then nothing changes. This economy chugs on. If I'm you, do I stop my buying? No. Because again, there are a ton of projects that are in process, a ton of projects that haven't started, that are already approved for Confitor, that have these tax benefits. Buy now. Buy while it's the best it's going to be. It's the same with the passport. I did this on another video. Get the passport now when it's easy. Because the moment that passport gets stronger, it gets harder to get. I'm buying now. That's why I'm saying it. People are like, oh, the government's paying you. Like, I wish. Send them my info. I'll give you my bank account information. Have them deposit some pesos, goddammit. Not seeing shit from them. Nor do I want it. I don't want to be a government stooge. But anyway, I say buy now. Now, here's how Abinader can screw this up. He could do exactly what many of you are shaking your head and feeling with that deep sense of skepticism, which is extremely expected given the history that this money, this additional tax revenue, gets wasted. It gets shoved in politicians' pockets, backdoor deals or whatever it might be, and none of this stuff gets done that they say is going to get done. And that might happen. And if it does, then the Dominican Republic will set all of this progress back decades. I believe, this is what I know of my 15 years in a Dominican family, that ego wins all. And that's every family, but especially Dominican families. Here's what I think. The president wants to see all of the infrastructure out there so that he could say, that's my legacy. He wants to see a guy like Collado continue his legacy into another term after he's done in 3 years or 3.5 years. If there was ever a chance for this money to be appropriated as well as it possibly could be, there's going to be waste. There's always waste. There's always corruption. every country. But if it's ever going to be done right, or the best it can be, it's gotta be now. The evidence I've seen over the last 5 to 6 years versus the 9 before that I've been coming here and have been part of a Dominican family is that there is an absolute, for maybe the first time ever, you all would know better than me maybe, commitment to ensuring that this gets done as right as possible. Not perfect, but as right as possible. Maybe I'm pie in the sky, maybe I'm airy-fairy, but I'm looking at the highways that weren't here, the 911 system that wasn't here, that I've heard multiple people now use, and it works well. The roadside programs, the airport construction, in many places, the electric grid, not perfect, but in many places, it's pretty damn here. No issues. And this is the direction the country is going in. When you look at the investments in what is happening and what has happened, there's actual visible evidence of progress, significant progress, maybe the most in any time frame ever. So I believe we're in an era where this money, for the first time, will be managed the best it's ever been. Let's not say perfectly. Of course not. However, if he does, Abinader and this administration and this government, somebody behind his back, screws this up and this money doesn't make it to infrastructure, school, education, public health care, the things that really matter to people here, it'll set things back quite a bit, at least for local Dominicans. What it won't do, though, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your position on this, it won't stifle the developed parts of this island. The real estate you're buying, that won't stop. That part, they're fully invested in, 100%. We're in interesting times. We'll see how this plays out. If you're looking to buy here, I always say get a great realtor, and I can get you a trusted realtor that I have. Just click into one of the links below and we'll get you set up with somebody that's doing amazing work down here. That's professional. And I'm going to keep chronicling my property that I'm building or buying that's being built so you can see that. And I'll keep on this. This is a few days in. I reserve my right to change my opinions based on new information learned, but hopefully this helps you to some extent. Now, the other big thing right now is the Haitian deportation issue that's happening locally. That's a big deal. And what you should do is watch this to get more on it.